What's going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and today we're going to be talking about the fusion that's going live today for Mother Cybele. Now, with that being said, I wanted to make one video giving you all of your options for champions you can keep if you are not pursuing the fusion legendary herself. With that comes the disclaimer that definitely carefully consider Mother Cybele, her kit, understanding that she can be buffed, reworked in the future. However, I've already shared my opinion on this, and in my opinion, you have to look at where your account personally is progression-wise, because sometimes a rework, no matter how good it is, will never be able to benefit you and your account. So these are the things you really have to keep in mind when deciding whether or not to go for a legendary that's in your means to get or to not for, based on what the epics can offer and based on what the champion can possibly do for a rework. Now, it's impossible, as I'm sure you all understand, to know what kind of rework this champion could get down the line. We have examples of Pixneal, Skull-Lord, Vargal, some of them who didn't even receive reworks when they had been heavily considered in the past. So take all this information and make this decision on your own as a personal player, because you know your account best. I do not know your account as well as you do, so it's up to you as the player to really determine if this is for you. With that being said, let's go over the epics that I want to talk about today. I'm going to talk about 3 of the 4 epics. Let me just go over the one I choose not to talk about. It's going to be Jurojin. Personally, I looked at his kit. I was not a fan of it. I didn't see lots of really good benefit for you besides maybe the Magma Dragon and Doom Tower. We have a Provoke here. It's never going to be irresistible against any boss, which is the unfortunate part. So he definitely loses some value there. Yes, he has a shield on him, and he has that attack down on the A1, but overall I could not find a solid use. And even coming down to something like Faction Wars for the Shadowkin, I really didn't see a place for this champion. So that's my thoughts on him, and I do not recommend going for this champion if you had to pick a viable 6-star out of all of the fusion epics we do see in front of us. Now, the next champion I want to talk about is an extremely creepy looking champion. We have Cornellia. Now, Cornellia is really interesting. I know Cold Brew did an awesome video showing kind of the bugged and broken problem of her. I thought that was cool. I haven't seen a Cold Brew video in a while, and it was heavily recommended by my viewers to check it out. I had done my own testing prior to that. I never really put the debuff on herself to see what the synergy was, because I didn't see the benefit in giving her an extra turn, just burning this A3 to apply the A2 after that instead of just opening with the A2. But I did find some other really cool things that didn't appear to be broken. So definitely keep in mind what he was saying about the uncertainty of revitalizing rest, putting that sleep debuff on her, giving her the extra turn meter. I did like how I used Relentless set. I would agree with that's a really good way to use it. However, I'm using pure speed here, and you're going to see why in just a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where I'm going to test Cornellia and then briefly explain what she has to offer here. So I'm going to go straight into Dragon 25, and this is the roster I have here. So one thing I noticed right away is self-harm is actually working with this skill. Now, this can be another bug. I'm not going to write that off, because as we can see here, it says debuff is lost due to taking damage from an enemy. So when I see a specific line of text that says from an enemy and I am applying self-harm to myself, that kind of makes me wonder if this is intentional or if this is something that will be fixed after they look into what's going on when she self-applies this debuff. So one obvious benefit to this champion right off the bat is her insane base speed, 109. She has an aura. It's not the best aura, but it's still a speed aura, which can help a lot of players. We have an AoE sleep. Once booked, it's a 100% chance. When an enemy loses sleep, it has a 50% chance unbooked as well to put a fear debuff, which can definitely be an annoying source of CC. Now, I elected to not really focus on that part too much here. I elected to focus on a lot of really interesting synergies. So the first one I want to test is a champion that was one of the most questionable and controversial fusions in the entirety of Raid Shadow Legends, the Folly fusion debacle. If you were around, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This guy was so pay to win, we had no idea. There was such a big money gate at the end, and it was actually this champion's fusion that led to the permanent Razan fusion as like an I'm sorry. So if you didn't know where Razan came from, you can thank Folly the next time you see him in your vault, in your roster, or wherever you see him inside the game of Raid Shadow Legends. However, Folly's making a comeback here. I'm not going to show Gerp Tuck just yet here. I want to focus on Folly. So while a lot of people have been really underwhelmed with Folly, there's a really cool interaction which can indeed reignite the viability of Folly here. If you're familiar with Folly's passive, he has a 1-turn CC prevention that also boosts his turn meter. So what does this let you do with someone like Cornellia? You can actually place asleep, get the increased turn meter from Cornellia's A3, and you also get the turn meter from Folly. What does this mean? Really quickly looking at the speeds and the turn meters of every single champion here. Folly is in straight up damage gear, no speed at all. I think he's at maybe 140, 150 speed. However, that's not going to matter at all. So what you can do, especially in Arena, which I am going to show you, is you can use this A3 on Folly here, and you can see Living Armor passive. This shoots his turn meter above everyone else. He cannot be cut off no matter what, because it totals out to be 100% turn meter, and the champion you would have to be facing there's just no possible way for any champion to cut in between Cornellia and Folly here. So this can be really good if you are struggling to speed tune your team. If you want a nuker, this alleviates a lot of pressure of using speed boots. Now you can use attack percent boots, not care about speed at all if Folly is in fact your nuker, and he will always go second here. So his passive works really well with the A3 of Cornellia. Alright, so with that being said, the next thing I do want to test out is the interaction between Cornellia, Griptuck, and Candrafin. I do want to keep Folly in here. You're going to see something very interesting. Currently, Folly has 145 speed, Candrafin has 198 speed. So let's take a look at this and watch this all unfold here. The first champion that's going to get a turn is going to be Griptuck with this awesome A3. This is the self-harm I was talking about. So we use this A3 here. Now we get to use this A2. Now let's look at what this A2 actually says. Heals that ally by 100% and completely fills the turn meter if the sleep debuff is lost due to taking damage from an enemy. Now you're going to notice right away the turn meters here. Folly is supposed to go last here, Candrafin is supposed to go next no matter what. So let's use this sleep on Candrafin and see what happens. So we used the sleep there, and the turn meter did in fact get boosted. Yet Folly was the champion to go next. This was different from Folly because we do have his passive here, adding an additional 50%. So this is what I've pretty much come to as a conclusion of what is going on here with this champion. So cycling back to the intended target here, let's go ahead and use this. So we are proccing that turn meter boost. So what I want people to realize is there's a difference between 100% turn meter and a full turn meter. Now when this says completely fills their turn meter, you would assume this would mean true value of the turn meter, which is like over 1,400 as far as speed value goes. From what I just saw here, it's looking like that's not happening here. It's simply filling it by 100%. If it was full turn meter value, Candrafin would actually go in front of Folly. The reason why Folly does not go behind anyone else in the battle here, despite his speeds, is because his passive adds an additional 50% on top of that. So he's getting 150% turn meter as opposed to Candrafin, who's losing his turn after his turn meter is reset all the way to 0. He is getting what this considers completely filling their turn meter, which is really 100% from what I've seen here, unless it's bugged and it's not a true value full turn meter depletion. Now if you're confused about this, let me explain it in the reverse way. There are champions that reduce your turn meter by 100%. Sometimes when this is used specifically on Spider, you see that he has turn meter remaining. That's because you can overfill to over 100% turn meter on every champion in this game based on the speeds of everyone in the match on your team and the enemy team. However, some skills say fully depletes turn meter, which is word for word what it does. It will take it all the way down to 0 no matter what, which is factually more than 100%. So that's the huge thing that people have to realize here. So the question is this in fact bugged? Is it supposed to be filling the turn meter by a true amount? Or is it working as intended and it's simply 100% turn meter value based on the current speeds of the champions in the round here? I know this might sound a bit confusing, but that's what I've gathered here, as we did see that 145 speed Folly, as well as all of these very low speed champions in front of us here in the enemy wave, did get a chance to cycle through and go in front of Cantrofan, who did have the passive broke from Gerptuk's self poisons here, and he did get this effect of fills their turn meter because we saw the tooltip here. So the question, like I mentioned before, becomes, is this broken or is this intended? Now, outside of this cool interaction, if this is working as intended, it's not as strong as I personally anticipated, unless you are using Folly, like I mentioned before. However, there's another really cool benefit to this champion. You have a 100% chance of placing a sleep if you do book the champion, and that's going to be really helpful because one key thing here is, like I did say before, she isn't currently built for accuracy, but that would definitely be the strategy. If you don't want to use her in arena, or if you can swing it in arena, definitely do that. One cool thing is she doesn't suffer to any type of weak hit ability. Since she's not physically hitting the targets when applying the sleep here, this increases her value a ton. Think about champions like Magnarr, very strong, borderline broken. He has to hit the target to sleep the opponents, which can definitely not work in his favor, which is why we see champions like Cantrofan here to the right in the current arena meta on defense, because it proves to counter Magnarr very well if there is that high chance of a weak hit. That is not going to be the same with Cornellia, which is why I do believe she's going to have a lot of value as a CC role and will make the Dwarf Faction War Crypt even stronger. On top of that, she has an awesome A1. I'm a really big fan of these skills. Her A1 Surprising Swiftness has a 40% chance of increasing the cooldown of one of the target skills by 2 turns at random. The at random part, yes, it could be a little bit annoying. However, it's so strong, and I do believe that now that we can exit out of this, because I have showcased what I wanted to, let's go ahead to how I geared this champion. Like I did say, full speed, but the key here is going to be the masteries. Always recommend timely intervention, but the 2 counterattack ones are really strong in my opinion because of how strong her A1 is. On top of what I just mentioned, I do believe unless you're heavily focused in investing on this A2 here, you don't even really have to book this champion if you're taking full value of this A3 with someone like a Folly or any other type of damage dealer with someone like Gerptuk Mossbeard. Now that we went over that, let's head straight to the arena and look at some arena battles where I can use this Folly mechanic to my advantage here. Let's go ahead and start against this team here with a Magnarr, Rhodos, Rector Drath, who is the wrong affinity here, but I'm hoping things work out in my favor. And finally, Duchess. So a lot of tankiness here. And what we're going to do is we are going to use the champions we talked about, Arbiter, Madame Ceres, and finally Cornellia with Folly here. So let's go ahead, start this battle, and kind of see what the synergy I'm talking about here is. Okay, we're going to start with attack up. We're going to go ahead and put that defense down, hopefully on every champion. We did get that. Now, this is where every single champion on their team, no matter what, if Cornellia was someone like a Gerptuk, anyone that didn't have a turn meter increase, Folly would get cut off, no doubt. There's zero doubt in my mind. Now with this A3 ability, we are guaranteeing he goes first with no chance of anyone else cutting him off. So we're going to target Rhodos because we do need a double hit on him. And on top of that, we also have a block revive. So we have Swift Parry here, which would be terrible. However, we did block revive, so we are in no threat of suffering any amount. You have the A1 with an awesome animation from Cornellia there. And game, set, match, we clean that up pretty nicely. So this is an awesome use for people who have been kind of underwhelmed with Folly, how he can perform. Yes, he does require better gear than a lot of the top tier nukers like Trunda, especially the Lion that just came out with his condition of very low health. Now Folly can definitely see some increased play if you do choose to get Cornellia here and you want to use that synergy between the two, guaranteeing him using attack boots, not having to worry about speed at all, pure damage to make sure he always goes directly after Cornellia no matter what. Alright, so now that we talked about Cornellia, the next champion I do want to talk about is going to be Magnarr. Magnarr is an interesting champion here. He does hit very hard. He has a few things going for him. He has a defense down debuff for 2 turns, 100% chance if the target is under HP burn. You're going to see the HP burn theme a lot with this champion here. Percussive Pound attacks all enemies, places an extra hit on enemies without HP burn, so kind of like a reverse Trunda in a sense, giving a 50% chance of placing that stun if the target is under HP burn. Finally, the A3 here, a debuff spread effect, taking 2 random debuffs from the target and placing them on all enemies under HP burn only, so keep that in mind. also increasing the duration of HP burn on all enemies by 1 turn, so this can be pretty good for Spider. However, I didn't feel like it fit there as good as most people thought it would. This champion heals by 1% of their max HP every time anyone in the battle takes damage from HP burn, so he has potential for this Spider. Like I said, I didn't personally see a huge value there because he doesn't provide HP burn on his own, and it's very reliant on HP burn being on a main target here for that debuff spread effect, and it only applies whatever buffs you would want to be spreading, which personally I can't think of one besides attack down that you would want to spread if every single target already has an HP burn. One thing you definitely don't want is to use someone like a Bellinor, who is a single target defense down and weaken, and have this ability go off, hit the main Spider in the Spider dungeon, have it spread that debuff to all of the Spiderlings now who now have defense down, weaken, as well as HP burn on everybody with an extended duration based on how this kit works, and now you are in fear of any AoE damage from your team, specifically what's to come here with how hard this guy hits, of killing off the Spiderlings before you get a chance to deal the proper damage from HP burn to the main Spider. So that was my biggest concern with this champion going forward. However, as we can kind of see here, I did gear him in full damage because I was curious as to how hard he hit. I can tell you for a fact this guy hits very hard. Where is this going to be useful for you guys? HP based damage dealers are very unique in this game because they don't suffer from any penalties like defense down and attack down as far as output goes. Of course, defense down is going to make him take significantly more increased damage, but that's not something I would personally worry about too much. The main thing here is if for some reason the enemy cuts you off, they place defense down, they place attack down, he's not going to suffer damage wise because all of his abilities are based on his health. So looking at his total stats, they're not crazy impressive. It's very hard for a lot of people, including myself, to have this crazy damage dealing HP set available because if you look at his base HP, it's not that impressive. Still, you're able to get some pretty crazy numbers here with that double hit. I would say he was like an HP based Trunda, but he just doesn't hit as hard as Trunda. So briefly testing this guy, hopefully it works against this team here. We're going to see how much damage he can do. And like I said before, my gear is going to be above and beyond, but it's all going to be relative to whatever. Okay, so we got some resist here that wasn't very ideal. We're continuing to resist here. Now let's go ahead and apply the hard hitting ability here. I don't think we're going to kill Lydia here. It's possible we don't kill Duchess. Let's go ahead, see the skill. You know what, we'll put it in 1x speed here so we can see fully and what we can do here. Okay, so reaction procced. Unfortunate, you hate to see it. You pretty much expect it at this point. We did get the revive here from Godseeker Neri's passive, even though she did in fact die. So let's go ahead, boost the turn meter, try to make sure we do in fact get a turn. Now this defense down weaken pretty much guarantees that whoever is targeted by Brachus is going to die 100% here. So let's go ahead and see what in fact happens. We'll try to reduce the turn meter of Lydia and deal some damage here. Unfortunately, we boosted the turn meter not knowing better. And there's another resist there, so it looks like we're going to get another full revive unless the AI works in our favor like this. So let's go ahead and use this A2 ability again, this time with defense down on one champion and strengthen. So this is against our favor right now, but let's see how we do. Okay, so this double hit for one did in fact work here, and I'm just going to put this on auto now because I believe we are going to win this no matter what. So my main point here is this guy isn't really a game-changing nuking champion. However, if you are early on into the game and have access to get this champion quite easily, he wouldn't be bad as an AoE nuker for you. Because like I said, a lot of the limitations from attack-based nukers and defense-based nukers don't apply to HP-based because there's very few things outside of something like a destroy set or anything that reduces a champion's max HP, which isn't quite common, that can affect this guy's output here. Now that same piece that I just pitched you for Arena is going to apply in any type of progression for dungeons, faction wars. He's definitely going to be a fantastic wave clear champion. If you can somehow work in HP burn, you have the option to work in that AoE CC on top of things. So all things to keep in mind when considering who to fuse here. Finally, let's talk about the last champion here, Tolf the Maimed. Now, as you can see, I have him in a relentless gear set, and I'll explain that in a little bit. This was a bit hard to test on the test server. because not a lot of people put the defenses in a way I could properly test this. I did reach out to a few people. Unfortunately, it was at an hour where not many people were around. So let's talk about the main points here. Cut Wide Open is an extremely unique skill here. It reduces any non-boss enemies' health to 50% right off the bat with no requirements to damage. Now this is really cool, and this is really strong for a lot of reasons. On top of that, if the champion's health is already below 50%, it will place a stun debuff for 1 turn, so that's also really cool. But now having a good A2 isn't going to cut it to make a champion really stand out here. The A1, another attack that cannot be critical. If you didn't notice from the A2 as well, this attack can't be critical, the A1 can't be critical. It's a double hit that heals the champion for 30% of damage inflicted. But the really cool part in my opinion is his passive, Armor Cracker. Decreases the value of enemy shield buffs by 50% at the start of every turn, then increases this champion's max HP by the same amount up to 25% of their max health. There's a lot of potential here, and I think now you can see why I did use Relentless Gear here. So like I said, there weren't a ton of ways for me to test this in the arena because people simply just aren't using shield sets here. So I had to do my best to find any type of team that was in fact using a shield set. So where I'm going to test this to guarantee a shield set without mindlessly spending way too much time searching for shield sets is Krisk. We already know this is going to be a guaranteed thing, so we can expect that there's going to be a shield here. So I'm not really worried about winning this match. It's more about showing you guys the potential this Fusion Epic does in fact have. Alright, so for this test, since I said it's not going to be realistic application, I did just realize that somehow I have 291 speed in that Relentless set, which is pretty damn fast, so that's one thing to consider. Another thing I want to test is, we've already seen some slight bugs with the champions that have come out, so I want to see if adding my own Krisk on the team is going to somehow affect synergy at all. Is it going to also reduce the amount of shield that my team has here? Also, another thing this shield is going to do, it's going to really show you guys the increase in health Tolf is in fact going to get. So with that being said, let's go ahead just pick any nuker. I had to pick a nuker knowing this is kind of a go second team. I think Leorius is still geared. Let's just throw in Leorius here. He does have built-in swift parry, so this could work to our benefit. So the main thing we want to test and figure out is going to be the following. 1x speed perfect. Let's watch and see who goes first. Okay, so Arbiter is going to go first, and it looks like the enemy Sifi is going to go second. What I want you guys to do is take a mental image of the shields you see on your screen here, take a mental image of the shields on the enemy team here, and watch as Tolf the Maimed gets a turn and his passive activates. So as we can see, there was a significant decrease in the shields here. Now, one thing I want to point out, and I'm hoping I'm right when I try this, is what is the limitation of 50% HP no matter what? I have zero belief that this is going to ignore shields. That would be, in my opinion, way too strong. Even though he's a Void champion, he is a Void epic, he's part of a fusion, and like I said, I think that's just way too strong. But one thing I'm looking for here is, how is this going to affect champions that have passives like Bulwark? Is it going to take away from that 50%? I would expect it to, but we're going to find out here together, hoping that any champion besides Sifi here does in fact have Bulwark on them. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's Bulwark on any other champion unless I missed it too quickly. However, you can see her health isn't at 50% because the shield was in fact applied here. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just burn the A3 of Leorius here. It's not going to do a ton of damage, but it should do enough to lower the health right here. Perfect. So we have a counterattack going on. And we didn't proc Swift Parry just in case there was an option for Swift Parry there. But the next hit from our good lion friend here should be rather significant. We'll use Krisk here. Put ally protection on everybody. There, Chris is going to do the same here. So unfortunately, unless we get really lucky with extra turns, we've reduced the shield once again, making it almost non-existent based on what was left. If you noticed, let's use an A1 on Duchess. We did get an extra turn. So let's watch the shield. So we are reducing the shield by half and removing it in some cases, which I think is really cool. Unless, let me look, is there a shield buff? There is no longer a shield buff on Krisk, so it will in fact remove it, I believe, unless, like I said, I missed it, if it gets low enough. There's another hit. We did not get a final relentless proc there. Let's go ahead and AoE everybody, with the risk of increasing the turn meter, which didn't happen thankfully. So Arbiter's dead. Now we're going to use our hard-hitting A2 here, hopefully killing some people. Okay, we killed everyone but Duchess. You hate to see it. We do have incredible Fury gear on this champion, which is going to be the ideal set as I've mentioned in my previous video. Let's go ahead, and I believe she is at 50% or lower, so we won't get a stun because there's block debuff, but let's just see what happens here. Okay, so this is interesting. I was not expecting this to happen. Since she was at whatever threshold that was met or not met from this skill here, inflicts damage based on the champion's max HP instead, and places a stun if the target's health is already less than 50. So I'd be really curious, and this would be almost impossible to test, what happens if the champion's health is at 51%? What I think is going to happen, which is unfortunate, but I believe it just goes from 51% to 50%, because if it took another 50% from 51, bringing it to 1% health, this champion would be crazy broken. Now, I do think there's a lot to be talked about here and a lot to be said about this champion already, because of how strong his passive is with shields. Shields are very common in this meta here. People are building crazy resistance and high shields. Now this guy can really shake things up, decreasing it by 50% at the start of each turn. If you do want to gamble with relentless gear, you can also get an additional 50% on top of that, really making the shields non-existent for champions, even if you can't apply them with that defense down. So I really do like this champion a lot. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show here. And it does look like I'll be able to test my theory here if it will just bring Duchess down to 50% health. And okay, that is exactly what happened, because we did hit for 111 before, so it will always bring the champion down to 50% only here. So overall, I can't complain about this champion. Of course, we are going to lose here. Don't let that deter you from how good this champion is in fact going to be. So now this comes to the part of the video which is the question everyone wants to know. Murder, which epic should we be focused on? If you, for some reason, don't want to think for yourself, in my personal opinion, this is strictly opinion, I think Cornellia is extremely strong. If you have Folly, I think her value drops a little bit without Folly, but overall, I think she's a very strong champion. I think Tolf the Maimed is going to do very well in Arena. If you are struggling in Doom Tower waves, this guy will also help you out, because having this guy fast enough to pretty much go first, chunk out whatever target's becoming a real nuisance to you, all the way down to 50% chance on the first turn, that's a ton of damage, especially for people who are progressing through this content. So that's a huge point there, and I do like the value of Tolf the Maimed a lot because of that fact. So if I had to rank these champions personally, I would rank Cornellia and Tolf almost even for rank 1, and you have to consider when I say that, it depends on where they're going to fit your account. If your account is more arena based and you don't have Folly, I think Tolf takes that first step. If your account is more overall based, where you need dungeons, faction wars, and you are struggling for dwarves, I think Cornellia is going to be the strategy there. Or if you're extremely early game, don't have access to any viable damage dealing champions, I think Magnarr is actually going to do very well for you, especially in some type of damage dealing CC set. I think there's a lot to be said for this champion in that aspect of the game. So once again, if I had to really quickly give an overall, I would definitely say Cornellia, Tolf are pretty even on the playing field depending on what you need, and then Magnarr comes second on that list if you're looking for straight damage. Outside of that, I would rate the Jurojin as a champion you really shouldn't be aiming for unless for some reason you have 0 Shadowkin. Maybe he's going to be worth picking up. You'll have to see the fusion event, the fusion calendar, see how many resources you need to spend to get this champion. But overall, I think this is going to be a very laid back and resource saving fusion for all of you if you choose not to go for Mother Cybele and go for some of these epics. I can't imagine that the requirements to get them are going to be very high. It allows you to get them and then save them, leave them at level 1 4-star for any clan versus clan or any future fusion you will want to use, so you have an access to free champion training points. Alright guys, that's going to conclude my very long video on my thoughts on all of these champions. I know this was a long one. I didn't want to make individual videos on every single champion here. I wanted to give you one source of information that you could kind of pick things out and make the decision for yourself based on your account. Give me your feedback in the comments. What do you guys think of these champions? and who are you going to be personally going for? As always, guys, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss my future content, and I will see you all in the next upload.